Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bruce Villarreal with Bruce Talks Podcast and Bruce Talks Podcast in Espanol. I'm so excited to connect with you one more week to share this valuable information and insight with messages of value, motivation, discipline, and ideas that can continue to transform your life, not only yours, help you to succeed, give you the encouragement and the tools to keep walking forward or moving forward towards your dreams, goals, and ambitions. This is your friend, Bruce Villarreal, speaker, businessman, and transformer of lives. And I'm so excited to be here one more week on Bruce Talks Podcast. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe, please like, please comment, and please share with your loved ones, business partners, family members, and employees, anybody who can receive value from this message. And we're so excited today because we have a special message, which is Flamin Hot Leadership. Flamin Hot Leadership, which is the story of Mr. Richard Montanez. And I had the pleasure, or Montañez, I had the pleasure of meeting him in our city this month of October. He came to give us a speech and his message of his life story. And it's very exciting because many of you have probably seen his movie, Flamin Hot. Many of you have probably tried his famous product, which is the Flamin Hot Cheetos, where this gentleman, with a brilliant idea, turned it into not $1 million idea, not a multi-million dollar, but a billion, multi-billion dollar industry and idea, because he had the courage to go against the grain and also fight back the criticism and even limitations that he possibly could have had. So this goes back in the 60s. Mr. Richard Montanez was part of a camp in the farms up in Northern California, where, you know, they grow fruits, vegetables, for us. And he said that the people he would be part of an encampment where, you know, families would get together and gather to cook and, you know, eat together, socialize. And it was interesting because they had a little community in these farmlands. And, you know, he grew up with Hispanics or Mexicans in these days. And, you know, there was segregation, basically a little bit of racism where, you know, the Hispanics couldn't be where the people, you know, Americans, whites were at the moment. But, you know, today that's not the issue. But at that moment, it was a very challenging time for many Hispanics, Latinos. And this young man saw that, he noticed that there was a big difference between the general public and him being a Hispanic or Mexican at the time, where the regular kids in the area were living in a yellow bus, a nice bus, and he was living in a messed up green bus, and he wanted to be in the yellow bus. You know, all of us, if we see something better, we're going to want it, especially when you're a kid, you just can't understand. But in those times, you know, there was that segregation, and he felt like he was excluded, and he felt different. And what he says is that his mother taught him that he shouldn't try to fit in, he should try to stand out. And I will say, let's start that conversation with not wanting to just fit in, but to stand out. And I think many of us have probably experimented in our lives. And if you're there, possibly you're trying to fit in, and you're trying to fit in where you don't belong, because you're different. We're all unique. So focus on standing out. That was one of the first lessons that he learned from his mother, and also being a Latino, Hispanic. And we're all one, you know, human race. You know, we have crossed all these barriers. But in those times, he said that he would go on that green bus, go to school, and he would see the kids having their bologna sandwiches and cupcakes. And him being a Hispanic or Mexican, he had a burrito. And this is in the 60s, where there was no Taco Bell. There were no taco stands or burrito places, where now, you know, it's a common food. It's a delicacy. But in those days, it was like he was weird or different. And he said that he would pull out his burrito and people were staring at him. And when he went back home to his mom, he said, "Mom, I want to have a bologna sandwich like everybody else, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with cupcakes and potato chips." But his mom said, "No, son, you're going to take a burrito for yourself, and you're going to take another one to share with a friend so they can try it." And guess what? That's where his burrito business started, where he was taking his burrito to eat, and he was selling his burritos to other classmates for 25 cents because they were delicious. So first lesson is, don't try and fit in. Make sure that you stand out. And yes, it probably feels weird at the beginning, but remember, we're all unique. You're all unique, and you have your special gift and talent. We all have our different race or cultures and different customs that, sets us apart. And also when, now when people are able to appreciate it, we love burritos, right? But anyways, he says that in his Flaming Hot Leadership, he talks about creating and looking out for opportunities for yourself. And what was interesting is that he grew up in these farmlands, picking fruits and vegetables, and he wanted something else. He said that one of his friends had landed a job at the local factory, the Frito-Lay factory or the Frito-Lay plant. And he said, hey, they're hiring. And for him, he was so excited. He didn't care what job he had. He wanted an opportunity, and he wanted to belong to the Frito-Lay family. He said he went to the office in those days and he got an application. He couldn't fill it out at the time because he couldn't read or write. What he did is he took it home so his wife Judy could fill it out for him. He went back and they hired him. And he said, thank God that there was no background checks in those days, because they were taking your word at where you're at. So it's interesting that he started his job as a janitor at this plant, leader at the Frito-Lay plant. And he started, you can say, from the bottom, but he had a vision for himself. And he said that, he was so happy to be a janitor because he had a stable job. He had benefits, something that he never had heard about, or life insurance, health insurance, for his family. So he was so excited and grateful. And what was interesting is that, in those times, Frito-Lay was going through some hard times. And the owner or the president or the CEO at the time, in those days, they used to send monthly VHS cassettes recorded with the message from the CEO, and they would play it for everybody at the plant with a special message from the CEO. And in this occasion, the CEO was saying is think like an owner and give us an idea that might help us save our company. Because guess what? People were going to be laid off. They're going to shut down factories and plants if they didn't have this idea that could probably save Frito-Lay company. And what he did, he thought outside the box. He was not thinking as a janitor. He took the courage to think as an owner. So that's the second tip that I can share that he says, or third tip that he shares, that his wife said, hey, you're a montañez and you have big ideas. And what he saw is that he started working for free with the driver and start to learn how to package and kind of place the product in the different stores. And what he caught on is that where they were putting their chips, it was next to the Mexican spices. And he said, hey, how about if we have chips with flavor or chili for Hispanic and Latinos? That was his great idea. He went home excited to tell his wife, Judy, I said, make some of your famous salsa. I'm going to bring some of the plain chips. And guess what? They came out with what's the first batch of the Flamin Hot Cheetos. And what he did something where he broke protocol. He said, think like an owner. And his wife took him to the library. They started looking about marketing, 3 books on marketing. He created a plan in transparencies. He didn't know how to use them. And basically what he did is that he called the CEO and he broke all the protocol. And that's another thing. Don't be afraid to break protocol. Because guess what? He was so naive that he didn't know that you had to go through protocol. Thank God he didn't. Sometimes being naive is good because you're not thinking of all the limitations. And what he did is he looked up for the directory and he found the CEO's extension call. The secretary answered, and the gatekeeper. Imagine that. How many of us have been confronted with the gatekeepers, with people we want to talk to? And he said that he sold the idea to the secretary, and he told me, hey, I have this great idea. You got to pass me to the CEO. And she did. She told the CEO, hey, guess what? You got to hear this man out. He was a janitor, but he had this idea of Hot Cheetos. The CEO told him, hey, we're going to be in your plant in about 2 weeks. And guess what? All the executive in between, the CEO, upper management, all the way down to his local plant, they wanted to make sure that he was fired because he broke protocol. And sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, we have to have that courage to break protocol. to get your message across, get that appointment, and share that vision and idea. And guess what? Even though this gentleman was the CEO, he was humble enough to listen even to a janitor. Why? Because he knew that they needed an idea to rescue the company. So be open-minded yourself of listening to some ideas that can transform your business. And if you're the one sharing the idea, have the courage to break through. And he says that you're always going to have people who are going to want to stop you. And he says that there's two types of leaders: the ones who want to run like a pharaoh, and one who's a deliverer. And the pharaohs are the ones who are tyrants. They want to cut you off, and sometimes they want to put a foot down where they can stop you. And then you have the deliverers. In this case, he said that he was questioned by upper management. And guess what? The deliverer was the CEO. And he asked a question. He said, how big is the market share, Mr. Montanez? And he, how big is the share or the marketplace? And he was like, he didn't know what to respond. He just said, this big. In other words, huge. And he says that the CEO said, see, that's how big our marketplace is. So sometimes that sincerity and sharing a message with the heart can open big doors. And guess what? Hot Cheetos turned into not a $1 million industry, not a multi-million-dollar industry, but to a multi-billion-dollar industry with this Flamin Hot Cheetos concept, which took Frito-Lay and Pepsi to the next level. And obviously, that brand is global. And he went from the ranks of a janitor to a high-level executive with these companies. And now he's a speaker around the world, multi-millionaire. But not only sharing his story of courage, but guess what? His wife was always supporting him. He had a good, solid support system at home. His wife, Judy, 48 years of marriage, almost 50. And so what does this mean? Have a good support system around you. Even if he has some crazy idea or an idea that, somebody can knock out. But his wife, Judy, said, hey, don't forget you're a montañez. So I ask you, what's your last name? What's your name? Who are you? Remember who you are and share that idea. Break through. Have the courage to break through. But he also said that keep your eyes, your heart, and your mind ready for your revelation. And what does that mean? So a revelation is something that you already have and know inside, but it is revealed and unveiled to you in the precise moment for you to go to the next level. How interesting is that? A revelation is something that has always been there, but is revealed and unveiled to you at the perfect moment. So all of you have this gift and opportunity inside of you. He says that we have to move from 3D to 4D vision. That's a whole nother level. And sometimes we're afraid to see beyond that. So he says, but let's go from 3D to 4D vision. How about if we step up our game and have a bigger vision, even though if you're criticized by other people, by the pharaohs, but how about if you're that deliverer or you have the door open from a deliverer as a leader? So I like that. So also, if you're a leader, are you a pharaoh leadership or are you a deliverer? But he mentions also that there's 3 levels of leadership, which I like this a lot. He says he gets paid millions of dollars from CEOs, senators, presidents to have advice from this man who was once a janitor, but he's an educated man. So that means that you can be self-educated. He says he likes to see the power of words. But what he says is that he has a concept of 3 levels of leadership. Number 1 is the concept of a pioneer, meaning that a pioneer maps out new territories or creates new opportunities. And it takes courage to be a pioneer because sometimes you're going to start alone. You're going to be criticized. People are going to want to stop you. But that's why the pioneers are the ones who dominate, are the ones who have the success because they're breaking through and mapping out new territories or creating new opportunities for yourselves and others. He said leadership level number 2 is the settler, the person who is building the infrastructure. In other words, you go from mapping out the territory, now you're moving to the next level, which is become a settler or a colonizer, and where you're building the infrastructure. But where he's at now, he says that leadership level number 3 is becoming a purposeful leader, meaning that you help people find their purpose. Isn't that awesome? That you can, as a man, a woman, young man, young lady, can create practice these 3 levels of leadership and become a purposeful leader and help people find their purpose. That's amazing. And as a final note, what he said is make your name count. Let's honor our ancestors. Let's honor all of those before us who have created the opportunity and paved the road, no matter how small or how big that opportunity is. But we are where we're at thanks to all of our ancestors, our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and all of those behind us who got us to where we are today. And that's amazing. So he says, as a final point, make sure that you honor your name, your last name, honor your wife, your children, and honor all of those before you, and more importantly, honor yourself. And for him, it was, hey, you're a montañez. So what is your last name? What is your name? And let's honor your name. Let's honor your last name. Let's honor our name and our last name and create a new legacy for ourselves. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that this talk has inspired you and encouraged you. It was so exciting to hear it from his mouth and see him personally in our city, Mr. Richard Montanez, an amazing man sharing a story of inspiration where he went from a janitor to a multi-million-dollar man, and not only that, with a humility, but also with great wisdom of leadership. So this is your Flamin Hot Leadership tips that we're sharing today to take you to the next level. I want to thank you for connecting to Bruce Talks Podcast, in Español. For all of you who want to hear this message in Spanish, make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you like, make sure that you comment, and make sure that you share. And I want to thank you for connecting with me one more week. We'll be seeing each other in the next episode with something of value, with giving you information and insight that's going to take you and us to the next level. I want to thank you. This is your friend, Bruce Villarreal, speaker, businessman, and transformers of lives. Let's do what we have to do together to go to the next level.